Jiwoo woke to the feeling of warm breath on her face. She had fallen asleep sitting against the containment bay wall, with the Leviathan curled protectively around her. The massive creature had positioned itself like a living fortress, its body creating a barrier between her and the rest of the room. When her eyes opened, she found herself looking into one large, intelligent eye that watched her with what seemed like concern. "Good morning," she whispered, reaching up to touch the creature's snout. The Leviathan made a soft churring sound and gently nudged her hand with its nose. The gesture was so familiar, so much like the injured bear she had helped as a teenager, that Jiwoo felt a wave of homesickness for Earth. The bay door opened, and Dr. Take entered slowly, his forearms held away from his body in a non-threatening posture. The Leviathan tensed immediately, its spikes beginning to rise. "It is okay," Jiwoo said quickly, placing her hand on the creature's neck. "Tyke is a friend. He wants to help you too." The Leviathan did not relax completely, but it did not attack either. It watched the Vrelian with wary eyes, ready to defend if needed but willing to wait. Tyke stopped several feet away and performed a formal bow, which among his people indicated deep respect. "Dr. Jiwoo, I came to apologize, and to ask if you would teach me how you did this." Jiwoo stood up slowly, mindful of the creature's watchful gaze. "There is nothing to apologize for, Dr. Tyke. You have decades of experience that I respect deeply. I just approached the problem differently." "But why?" Tyke asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "How did you know this would work when all established protocols suggested restraint and sedation?" Jiwoo walked over to him, gesturing for them to sit on the floor. The Leviathan watched but remained calm, seeming to understand that they meant no harm. "Can I tell you about my grandfather?" For the next hour, Jiwoo shared stories from her childhood. Growing up in rural Korea, where her grandfather rehabilitated injured wildlife, he had been a simple farmer with no formal education. But he understood animals in a way that went beyond science. He had this philosophy, Jiwoo explained. He said that fear and pain make all creatures the same. A hurt animal does not care if you are trying to help. It only knows it is scared. But if you can show them they are safe, they will show you who they really are. Tyke listened with rapt attention. "But humans are prey species, yes? Small, weak physically, vulnerable. How did your ancestors survive long enough to develop such empathy?" Jiwoo smiled. "We are not prey, Dr. Tyke. We are persistence hunters. Our ancestors did not have fangs or claws or speed, so we learned to outlast our prey, to track them for days until they collapsed from exhaustion. But we also learned something else. We learned to work together, to read emotions, to form bonds with other species." She stood and walked over to the observation window, looking out at the station beyond. "Humans domesticated wolves, Dr. Tyke. Do you understand how incredible that is? We took apex predators, animals that could kill us easily, and we convinced them to be our partners. Not through force or domination, but through mutual benefit and trust." Tyke's antennae quivered with realization. "Your species co-evolved with predators. You learned to read their emotions, to communicate across species barriers." "Exactly," Jiwoo confirmed. "We have dogs, cats, horses, birds. We make companions of creatures that by all logic should be our enemies or our food. It is in our nature to look at another living thing and ask, how can we understand each other? Rather than, how can I control or destroy you?" Commander Hyun entered the bay, her translucent form shimmering. "That is a remarkable evolutionary path. Most species in the galaxy evolved either as prey, developing fear responses and flight behaviors, or as predators, developing dominance and territory aggression. Humans somehow developed cooperation as a survival strategy." "Mirror neurons," Jiwoo added, warming to the subject. "Humans have highly developed mirror neurons that let us feel what others feel. When I see the Leviathan in pain, I do not just observe it, I feel it. That empathy drives me to help, not because of protocol or duty, but because I cannot bear to see another creature suffering." The Leviathan had been listening to this conversation with apparent interest. It slowly stood and walked over to where they sat, settling down near them but keeping Jiwoo within reach of one massive paw. Tyke stared at the creature in wonder. "It understands that we are discussing it. Dr. Jiwoo, I have studied the thornback Leviathan species reports. They were classified as semi-sentient at best, operating primarily on instinct." "They were wrong," Jiwoo said flatly. "Look at its eyes, Dr. Tyke, really look. This creature thinks, feels, remembers. It knows I helped it. It knows you were afraid of it before. It is deciding right now whether to trust you based on how we interact. Tyke approached the Leviathan slowly, following Jiwoo's earlier example. He sat on the floor, making himself less threatening. The creature watched him with intense focus. Then Tyke did something that surprised everyone. He began to hum, trying to replicate the soothing sound Jiwoo had made. The sound that came from Tyke's alien vocal structure was nothing like Jiwoo's melody. It was higher pitched with harmonics that no human could produce, but the intention was the same. The attempt at communication, at offering comfort. The Leviathan tilted its head, considering. Then it made its own sound, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. It was not hostile. It was a response and acknowledgement. "It is trying to talk to you," Jiwoo said softly. "It is saying it hears you." Tears formed in Tyke's compound eyes, something Vrelians rarely displayed. In his 40 years of practice, he had treated thousands of creatures. He had saved lives, performed miracles of surgery, pioneered new medical techniques, but he had never connected with a patient. He had never thought of them as individuals with thoughts and feelings beyond biological drives. "I have been a doctor for 4 decades, Tyke said, his voice thick with emotion. "I have studied, learned, perfected my craft. But I never asked the most important question. Not how do I treat this creature, but who is this creature?" Jiwoo placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You are asking now. That is what matters." Over the next several hours, Tyke worked alongside Jiwoo to complete the Leviathan's treatment. She taught him to move slowly, to explain each action, to give the creature agency in its own care. When they needed to check the wound, Jiwoo asked permission first, and the Leviathan chose to expose its injured side. When they administered antibiotics, Tyke showed the creature the injection device first, demonstrated it on himself to prove it was brief discomfort for lasting benefit. The Leviathan tolerated all of it with remarkable patience. More than that, it participated. It held still when asked, shifted position to give them better access, even seemed to understand when Jiwoo explained they needed to monitor its temperature and heart rate. Commander Hyun watched from the observation deck with growing amazement. "This will change everything," she said to her assistant. "Not just veterinary medicine, but how we approach all non-member species. If we have been misunderstanding creatures this badly, what else have we gotten wrong?" By evening, the Leviathan's fever had broken. The infection was responding to treatment. The creature was eating, drinking, showing signs of recovery that would have been impossible while it was in a state of constant stress and fear. Jiwoo sat with the Leviathan, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. This was why she had become a veterinarian. Not for the prestige or the challenge, but for moments like this, watching a creature that had been broken and terrified begin to heal and trust again. "Dr. Jiwoo," Tyke said, approaching with unusual hesitancy, "would you be willing to teach others your methods? Not just me, but veterinarians across the station, perhaps across the galaxy." Jiwoo looked at the Leviathan, who watched them with calm, intelligent eyes. "I would be honored, Dr. Tyke, but I think the Leviathan should be our first teacher. Anyone who wants to learn should start by sitting with this creature and really seeing it. Not as a dangerous beast or a medical challenge, but as a person." "A person," Tyke repeated, testing the word. Then he looked at the Leviathan and bowed deeply. "Yes, a person." The Leviathan made its rumbling sound again, and for the first time since its capture it seemed almost content. Not happy, not yet. It still missed its home, its eggs, its life before humans had torn it away. But for now, in this moment, it was safe. It was seen. It was understood, and sometimes that was enough to begin healing. The first touch lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. The Leviathan pulled its claw back and watched Jiwoo with new awareness. It circled her slowly, keeping its injured side away from her, but the movements were no longer aggressive. It was assessing her, trying to understand what she wanted. Jiwoo continued humming, keeping her body language open and relaxed. She had learned long ago that animals could read human emotion through subtle cues that most people were not even aware of. Tension in the shoulders, quickened breathing, the slight widening of eyes. The Leviathan was reading her now, just as she had read it. After another hour of patient waiting, Jiwoo slowly stood up. The creature tensed but did not retreat. She moved with careful deliberation toward her medical kit, which she had placed near the wall. Every action was telegraphed, obvious, giving the Leviathan time to process and understand that she meant no harm. She opened the kit and removed a medical scanner. the same type that Dr. Tyke had tried to use. The Leviathan's spikes rose immediately at the sight of it. It remembered this device, remembered pain and fear associated with it. "I know," Jiwoo said softly, keeping her voice low and soothing. "I know it scared you before, but I need to help you, and I need this to understand your injuries." She held the scanner at her side, not pointing it at the creature. Then she did something that would have horrified any galactic medical professional. She used the scanner on herself first, letting the Leviathan see and hear the device activate, watch it pass over her arm and chest. The scanner beeped softly, displaying basic human vitals. The creature watched this with clear interest. Its head tilted in that universal gesture of curiosity that seemed to exist across every intelligent species. "See?" Jiwoo said. "It does not hurt. It just looks." She slowly raised the scanner toward the Leviathan, moving so slowly that it took nearly a minute to bring the device to scanning range. "May I?" The Leviathan made a low rumbling sound but did not move away. Jiwoo activated the scanner, and data began flowing across her portable display. What she saw made her heart sink. The primary wound on the creature's left side was deep, but worse, it was infected. The infection was spreading through the creature's system, causing fever and systemic inflammation. That explained some of the aggression. The creature was literally sick with pain, but there was something else in the scan, something artificial lodged deep in the wound. Jiwoo enhanced the image and felt anger burn through her professional calm. It was a tracking device, the kind exploration companies use to monitor captured specimens. And it was not just sitting dormant. The device was sending out regular pulses, probably to prevent the flesh from healing around it. Every few minutes, the device would send an electric shock directly into the wound. The Leviathan had been living with this for days, maybe weeks. No wonder it had been impossible to calm with traditional sedation. The creature could never relax because every few minutes fresh agony would spike through its body. "Oh, you poor thing," Jiwoo whispered, looking up at the massive creature with tears in her eyes. "They did this to you on purpose. They wanted to make sure you stayed aggressive so they could justify keeping you locked up." The Leviathan seemed to sense her distress. It lowered its head toward her, and she could swear she saw recognition in its eyes. This was not a mindless beast. This was a thinking, feeling being that had been tortured for profit. Jiwoo spoke into her communicator. "Commander Hyun, I need surgical tools brought to the bay. The creature has a foreign object embedded in its wound that is causing constant pain. I need to remove it immediately." Outside in the observation area, Dr. Taek responded. "Dr. Jiwoo, surgical extraction will require full sedation and restraints. The creature will never tolerate—" "It will tolerate it if I explain what I am doing," Jiwoo interrupted. "Commander, please. Trust me." There was a long pause before Hyun's voice came through. "Surgical kit will be delivered to the bay entrance. Dr. Jiwoo, be careful. What you are attempting has never been done with a creature of this size and danger level. First time for everything," Jiwoo replied with more confidence than she felt. When the surgical kit was delivered through the bay's secure pass-through, Jiwoo brought it over to where the Leviathan watched her. She opened the kit and began showing the creature each tool, the scalpel, the clamps, the antiseptic spray. She demonstrated each one on herself, touching the scalpel to her palm without cutting, using the clamps to grip her sleeve, spraying the antiseptic on her hand. "I need to cut into your wound," Jiwoo explained, pointing to the creature's injured side. "I need to remove the thing inside that is hurting you. It will hurt more at first, but then the pain will stop. Do you understand?" The Leviathan made a soft churring sound and settled down onto the floor, lying on its right side to expose the wound. The gesture was so clearly intentional, so obviously a decision to trust, that Jiwoo heard gasps from the observation deck. She knelt beside the massive creature and began to work. Her hands were steady despite her racing heart. She cleaned the area around the wound, applied local anesthetic that she hoped would work on alien biology, and then made the first incision to expose the tracking device. The Leviathan tensed and a low growl built in its throat. But it did not move. It did not strike. Jiwoo kept talking, narrating everything she was doing. "I am removing the bad thing now. Almost done. You are so brave, so very brave." The tracking device was buried deeper than her scans had shown. She had to cut through several layers of tissue to reach it. The Leviathan's growl increased in volume and its claws gouged deep marks into the floor. But still, it held still. It was choosing to endure pain because it understood she was trying to help. When Jiwoo finally extracted the device, she held it up so the creature could see. "This is what hurt you. It is gone now." The device was still active, pulsing with electricity. Jiwoo threw it across the bay where it sparked against the wall. The Leviathan watched it go, then turned its massive eyes back to Jiwoo. And then the most amazing thing happened. The creature's whole body relaxed. The constant tension that had been visible in every muscle suddenly released. Its breathing slowed and deepened. Its spikes lowered completely, lying flat against its hide. Jiwoo worked quickly to clean the wound properly, apply antibiotics and healing gel, and close the incision with medical adhesive. The entire procedure took 40 minutes. When she finished, she sat back, exhausted but triumphant. The Leviathan lifted its head and looked at her with what could only be described as gratitude. Then it did something that made Jiwoo laugh through her tears. It shuffled closer and rested its enormous head in her lap, the same way an injured dog might seek comfort from its caretaker. She stroked the creature's crystalline spikes gently, marveling at how they felt cool and smooth under her touch. "You are a good one, are you not? Just scared and hurt, but we are going to fix that. I promise." In the observation deck, Dr. Tyke stood in stunned silence. In 40 years of veterinary practice across hundreds of worlds, he had never seen anything like this. He had never imagined it was possible. The human had not just treated the creature. She had communicated with it, earned its trust, formed a bond that transcended species and language. Commander Hyun's voice was soft with wonder. "Dr. Tyke, I believe we have much to learn from Earth's approach to animal care." Tyke's antennae lowered in a gesture that, among his people, meant humility and acceptance of new truth. "Yes, Commander. I believe we do." Inside the bay, Jiwoo continued stroking the Leviathan's head, humming her grandfather's song. The creature's eyes slowly closed, and for the first time since its capture, it fell into peaceful sleep. Not sedated unconsciousness, but real sleep born of feeling safe. And Jiwoo sat with it, unwilling to break the trust they had built, ready to stay as long as the creature needed her. Because that was what you did when someone finally felt safe enough to rest. You did not leave them alone. Jiwoo sat in her quarters, surrounded by holographic screens showing everything she could find about thornback leviathans. There was not much information. The species had only been discovered 18 months ago, and most of what existed focused on their defensive capabilities and territorial nature. Hardly anyone had tried to understand them beyond classifying them as dangerous. She pulled up the footage from the creature's capture. The exploration team had been surveying mineral deposits on an uncharted planet when they stumbled upon a crystalline forest. Beautiful formations of natural crystal trees that would be worth millions on the galactic market. They had been so focused on potential profit that they had not noticed the warning signs. Jiwoo watched as the team's drone footage showed the thornback leviathan emerging from between the crystal formations. It had not attacked immediately. It had postured, made itself large, vocalized warnings. Classic territorial behavior. The team should have retreated. Instead, they had attempted to sedate it from a distance. The sedative dart had gone wide and struck something behind the creature. Jiwoo paused the footage and enhanced the image. There, hidden in a depression surrounded by crystal formations, were 3 large eggs. The creature had been guarding its nest. Everything that followed made terrible sense. The Leviathan had not been aggressive. It had been desperate. When the team tried to capture it, they had used neural disruptors, equipment designed to cause disorientation and pain. They had wounded it multiple times trying to contain it. They had torn it away from eggs that would die without protection. The creature had every reason to be terrified. Jiwoo made notes, her mind working through the problem like her grandfather had taught her. He had been a simple man who rehabilitated injured animals in the Korean countryside. No fancy technology, just patience and understanding. He used to say that every aggressive animal was just a scared animal that had not been given another choice. She prepared a treatment plan that would have seemed insane to most galactic veterinarians. No restraints. No heavy sedation. No forcing the creature to submit. Instead, she would make the environment feel safe and then wait for the Leviathan to accept her presence. When she presented the plan to Commander Hyun the next morning, she expected resistance. What she got was worse. Dr. Tyke had called an emergency meeting with the station's medical board. This is madness, Tyke insisted, his forearms gesturing emphatically at Jiwoo's proposal displayed on the conference room screen. Dr. Jiwoo wants to enter the containment bay alone without armor, without restraints on the creature. She will be killed within seconds. The creature won't kill me if it doesn't feel threatened, Jiwoo countered. She kept her voice calm, professional. Every protocol we have used so far has reinforced its fear. Armor says we expect violence. Restraints say we want to hurt it. Heavy sedation takes away its ability to defend itself, which increases panic. A Vrelian medical officer clicked her mandibles. Dr. Jiwoo, your compassion is admirable, but you are asking us to approve a plan that contradicts 40 years of established veterinary practice. Established practice that has led to a recommendation of killing the patient, Jiwoo replied. She stood up, moving to the screen and highlighting sections of her research. Look at these behavioral patterns. Every species in the galaxy shows the same responses to fear. Elevated heart rate, defensive posturing, attempts to flee or create distance. The Leviathan shows all of these markers. It is in a state of constant panic. Commander Hyun spoke from her position at the head of the table. Dr. Tyke, you stated the creature feels no pain, only anger. Yet Dr. Jiwoo's analysis suggests otherwise. As a telepath, I can sense the creature's emotional state, though its alien mind is difficult to read clearly. What I sense is not rage. It is terror and pain. Tyke's antennae drooped slightly. Commander, I meant no disrespect to your abilities. But even if the creature is afraid, fear makes animals more dangerous, not less. A cornered, terrified predator is the most lethal kind. On Earth we have a saying, Jiwoo said quietly. The most dangerous animal is not the one that wants to fight. It is the one that sees no other option. I want to give this creature another option. The medical board debated for another hour. Concerns about liability, about setting dangerous precedents, about risking human life for an animal that might be beyond saving. Jiwoo listened to every objection and addressed each one with patience. She was not trying to prove them wrong. She was trying to help them see what she saw. Finally, Commander Hyun made the decision. Dr. Jiwoo will have her 24 hours. However, security will maintain position outside the containment bay and we will have emergency medical teams on standby. If the situation becomes critical, we will intervene whether Dr. Jiwoo approves or not. It was not perfect, but it was permission. Jiwoo bowed slightly, a gesture of respect she had not quite abandoned from her upbringing. Thank you, Commander. I will not waste this opportunity. The preparation took 3 hours. Jiwoo had the lighting in the containment bay dimmed to 50%. She had all unnecessary equipment removed, especially anything that made high-pitched sounds or reflected light in sharp ways. She requested that the temperature be increased by 8 degrees, closer to the climate of the Leviathan's homeworld. Most importantly, she had the medical team prepare a sedative mist that would take the edge off the creature's pain without dulling its awareness. She needed the Leviathan conscious enough to understand she was not a threat. When everything was ready, Jiwoo stood outside the containment bay door, taking slow breaths. Fear was normal. Her grandfather had been afraid every time he approached an injured bear or wild boar. The difference was not feeling fear. The difference was not letting fear control your actions. Dr. Tyke approached her, his posture uncertain. Dr. Jiwoo, I still believe this is unwise, but I want you to know that I hope you succeed. Truly. Jiwoo smiled at him. Thank you, Dr. Tyke. That means more than you know. She entered the bay alone, and the door sealed behind her with a soft hiss. The Leviathan was in the center of the space, still inside the reinforced cage, but with the door open. It could emerge at any moment. When it saw Jiwoo, it made a sound that was part growl, part hiss. Its crystalline spikes began to rise, a threat display. Jiwoo did not approach. She did not make eye contact, which many animals interpreted as aggression. Instead, she sat down on the floor, crossing her legs, making herself as small and non-threatening as possible. Then she began to hum. It was a song her grandfather used to sing, a simple melody without words, low and rhythmic. The kind of sound that existed in every culture on Earth when parents soothed frightened children. She had no idea if the Leviathan would respond to music, but rhythm and tone were universal languages. The creature stopped mid-snarl. Confused, it tilted its massive head, studying this strange small being that had entered its space and then done nothing. No weapons, no sudden movements, just sitting and making a gentle sound. Minutes passed, then an hour. Jiwoo's legs began to cramp, but she did not move. She kept humming, kept breathing slowly, kept projecting every ounce of calm she possessed. Outside, through the observation windows, she knew everyone was watching. She could imagine Dr. Take's anxiety, Commander Hyun's careful monitoring, security personnel with fingers hovering over emergency protocols. But inside the bay, there were only two living things learning about each other. The Leviathan took one step forward, then another. Its spikes were still raised, but not as aggressively. It was curious now, trying to understand what this creature was that showed no fear and no hostility. Jiwoo slowly extended her hand, palm up, fingers relaxed. An offering of peace. The Leviathan moved closer, its massive head now just 3 feet from her. She could smell its breath, metallic and sharp. She could see the intelligence in its eyes, the pain in the way it held its injured side. The creature extended one massive claw. For a heartbeat, Jiwoo thought she had miscalculated, that it would strike. Instead, the Leviathan gently touched her palm with the tip of its claw. The touch was feather-light, testing, wondering. Then the creature made a new sound. Not a growl or a roar. A low, mournful keen that echoed through the containment bay. It was the sound of pain and exhaustion and desperate hope that maybe, finally, someone understood. Jiwoo felt tears on her cheeks, but she kept humming. She had been right. The creature was not angry. It had never been angry. It had just been afraid, and no one had bothered to ask why. The alarm screamed through Orbital Station Meridian 7, and Dr. Take's forearms moved with practiced precision across his medical console. His compound eyes tracked multiple screens at once, a skill that had made him one of the finest veterinarians in the galaxy. For 40 years, he had treated creatures from 200 different worlds. He had seen it all, or so he thought. The transport ship docked with a heavy clang that shook the medical bay. Tyke's antennae twitched as he received the preliminary data. A thornback leviathan, 12 feet tall, multiple lacerations, aggressive. The last word made his inner mandibles click with concern. When the containment unit rolled into the bay, Tyke understood why the transport crew looked so shaken. The creature inside was massive, covered in crystalline spikes that jutted from its dark-scaled hide. Each spike caught the light and threw it back in angry reds and oranges. Blood seeped from wounds across its body, staining the floor of the reinforced cage. The beast slammed against the walls with enough force to dent the titanium alloy. Sedation at maximum, the transport captain reported, his voice strained. It barely slowed down. Tyke approached the cage carefully, his medical scanner extended. He needed vitals, tissue samples, anything to start treatment. The moment his scanner beam touched the creature, it roared. The sound was something between a lion's growl and tearing metal. The Leviathan threw itself against the cage wall nearest to Tyke with such violence that the entire containment unit slid 3 feet across the floor. Tyke jumped back, his chitinous plates flaring in alarm. Around the medical bay, other staff scattered. Security personnel raised their plasma barriers, ready to contain a breach. "Impossible to treat," Tyke announced after a moment, his voice carrying the weight of his experience. "The animal is beyond reason. It will kill anyone who approaches. I recommend euthanasia before it damages the station." The words felt heavy, but Tyke knew when a creature was too far gone. This was not just aggression. This was pure, uncontrolled rage. The creature had no interest in survival, only violence. Commander Hyun entered the bay, her translucent form shimmering in the station's artificial light. As a Centauri, she could read surface thoughts and emotions, though she rarely spoke of what she sensed. Her large eyes studied the thrashing creature with concern. The explorers who brought it paid significant credits for medical intervention. Hyun said quietly, "Are you certain there is no other option?" Tyke gestured with 2 of his arms at the violence on display. "Commander, I have treated aggressive species before. This is different." The creature is consumed by rage. It feels no pain, only anger. Every moment we delay risks a containment breach. The medical bay fell silent except for the rhythmic slamming of the Leviathan against its cage. Staff members exchanged nervous glances. Euthanasia was always a last resort, but sometimes it was the only humane choice. "Permission to assess the situation, Commander?" The voice came from the back of the bay. Take's eyes swiveled to identify the speaker. It was one of the new staff members, a human. Dr. Jiwoo, if he remembered correctly. She had been assigned to the station 3 months ago as part of Earth's integration into the Galactic Union. Tyke had barely noticed her. She worked in the lower levels, treating small creatures that posed no real challenge. Jiwoo stepped forward, and Taik got his first good look at her. She was small by galactic standards, barely 5.5 feet tall. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the basic medical uniform without any of the protective gear most veterinarians preferred. She looked impossibly fragile next to the massive creature still destroying its containment unit. Dr. Jiwoo, Commander Hyun acknowledged. You have relevant experience with aggressive megafauna? I do, Commander, Jiwoo replied. Her voice was steady, calm. I worked with injured wildlife on Earth before joining the station. Large predators, territorial species, creatures in extreme distress. Taik's antennae flicked with something close to amusement. With respect, Doctor, Earth animals are hardly comparable to a thornback leviathan. This creature comes from a world where everything has evolved to kill. It is apex predation incarnate. Jiwoo walked toward the observation window, ignoring the warnings from security. She stood close to the glass, close enough that when the leviathan slammed against the cage, she was mere inches from its fury. Taik watched her, expecting her to flinch, to step back, to show the proper fear. She did not. Instead, Jiwoo stood perfectly still, her eyes tracking the creature's every movement. She watched for a full 2 minutes while everyone else in the bay waited. The leviathan continued its assault on the cage, but Jiwoo's expression never changed. She was not looking at the spikes or the blood or the damaged cage walls. She was looking at the creature itself. It's not angry, Jiwoo said finally, her voice so quiet that Taik had to adjust his audio receptors to hear her. It's afraid. The statement was so absurd that Taik thought he had misheard. Dr. Fear does not explain this level of aggression. The creature is clearly— Look at its spines, Jiwoo interrupted, still not turning from the window. They're flattened against its body. That's a defensive posture, not an offensive one. Look at how it positions itself. It keeps its left side away from us, protects that wound. It's not trying to attack. It's trying to make itself too dangerous to approach. Taik moved closer to the window, studying the creature with fresh eyes. He had been so focused on the violence, on the immediate threat, that he had not looked deeper. But now, watching carefully, he could see what the human saw. The creature's pupils were dilated far beyond what aggression would cause. Its breathing was rapid and shallow, and yes, it was protecting its wounded side with a consistency that suggested pain, not rage. Fear can look like anger when a creature is cornered, Jiwoo continued. When an animal is hurt and scared, it lashes out at anything that comes close. Not because it wants to fight, but because it doesn't know what else to do. It thinks we're going to hurt it more. Commander Hyun studied Jiwoo with new interest. Can you treat it? I can try, Jiwoo said. But I need 24 hours, and I need everyone to trust my methods. They might seem strange. Taik's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep skepticism. Commander, with all respect to Dr. Jiwoo's enthusiasm, this creature requires expert handling. My 4 decades of experience have led to a recommendation of death, Jiwoo said, finally turning to face Taik. There was no hostility in her expression, only determination. I'm asking for one day to try something different. If I fail, the creature will be no worse off than it is now. But if I succeed, we save a life. Hyun's telepathic senses rippled through the room. Taik felt the gentle touch of her mind, reading intentions and truths. After a moment, the commander nodded. 24 hours, Dr. Jiwoo, but you will follow all safety protocols. I will not risk your life unnecessarily, Jiwoo smiled. Thank you, Commander. I'll start preparing immediately. As Jiwoo left the bay to gather equipment, Taik stood at the observation window, watching the Leviathan continue its desperate attempts to keep the world at bay. Perhaps the human was right. Perhaps decades of clinical distance had made him forget that behind every set of teeth and claws was a thinking, feeling creature. Or perhaps the human was simply naive, and her compassion would get her killed. Time would tell which truth would prevail. 3 days after the Leviathan's successful treatment, a corporate shuttle docked at Station Meridian 7. Jiwoo was in the medical bay, teaching a group of veterinary students from various species how to read animal body language, when Commander Hyun's urgent summons came through her communicator. Dr. Jiwoo, please report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. We have a situation. The tone in Hyun's voice made Jiwoo's stomach tighten. She excused herself from the class and hurried through the station corridors. When she entered the conference room, she found Hyun, Dr. Taik, and a being she did not recognize. The stranger was a synthoid, an artificial life form with smooth metallic features and crystalline eyes that processed information faster than organic minds. Dr. Jiwoo, Hyun said formally. This is Mirai, legal representative for Stellar Acquisitions Corporation. They are the exploration company that brought the Leviathan to our station. Mirai's voice was perfectly modulated, emotionless. Dr. Jiwoo, I have been reviewing the medical reports on specimen 7743, the creature commonly called a thornback leviathan. We are pleased that it has recovered sufficiently for transport. We will be taking possession today. Taking possession? Jiwoo repeated, the words not making sense. You cannot just take it. The creature is still recovering, and besides, it was captured illegally from a nesting site. Our legal department has reviewed all relevant statutes, Mirai interrupted smoothly. The planet where specimen 7743 was found is not registered with the Galactic Council. It has no protected status. The creature itself is not classified as sentient by any official body. Therefore, it is legally salvage, and Stellar Acquisitions has filed proper ownership claims. Jiwoo looked at Commander Hyun in disbelief. Commander, you cannot allow this. They tortured this creature. They implanted a pain device to keep it aggressive. I documented everything in my reports. Mirai's head tilted slightly. The tracking device was standard equipment for containing dangerous specimens. Any discomfort was an unfortunate but necessary side effect. Stellar Acquisitions plans to donate specimen 7743 to the Andromeda Prime Zoo, where it will be well cared for and serve as an educational exhibit. It has a nest, Jiwoo said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. It has eggs that will die without parental care. You cannot just kidnap a creature from its home and call it legal. Your emotional response is noted, Mirai replied without any change in tone. However, emotion is not a legal argument. The creature will be transferred to our transport ship within the hour. Please prepare it for sedation and containment. Jiwoo stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. No, absolutely not. I refuse. Mirai's crystalline eyes flickered. You do not have the authority to refuse, Dr. Jiwoo. Commander Hyun, please, instruct your staff to cooperate with this legal transfer of property. Hyun's translucent form seemed to dim with distress. Mirai, while I understand the legal position, surely we can negotiate alternative arrangements. The creature has formed a bond with Dr. Jiwoo. Removing it now could cause severe psychological distress. Psychological distress in non-sentient property is not a legal concern, Mirai stated. Commander, I remind you that Stellar Acquisitions provides significant funding to this station. It would be unfortunate if our relationship became adversarial over this matter. The threat was clear. Cooperate or lose critical funding. Jiwoo felt rage building in her chest, the kind of righteous anger that had gotten her in trouble before. She was about to say something that would probably end her career when Dr. Taik spoke up. Commander Hyun, I request an emergency medical review. Dr. Jiwoo's treatment notes indicate several irregularities with the creature's capture that may be relevant to this discussion. Mirai turned its attention to Taik. Dr. Taik, your reputation as a veterinarian is well known. Surely you understand the importance of established procedures and legal frameworks. I do, Taik replied, his antennae perfectly still in a way that indicated he was thinking very carefully. Which is why I am concerned about the tracking device, Doctor. Jiwoo removed from the specimen. The device was not simply passive monitoring equipment, it was programmed to deliver regular painful stimuli. That violates galactic statutes on animal welfare, specifically Section 7.3 regarding unnecessary cruelty in specimen containment. Mirai was silent for exactly 2 seconds, an eternity for a synthoid's processing speed. The device was approved by our Corporate Safety Board, but not by the Galactic Animal Welfare Committee, Jiwoo added, understanding where Taek was leading. Any corporation operating in council space must adhere to those standards, regardless of where the animal was captured. Furthermore, Taek continued, pulling up data on the conference room display, I have reviewed the capture footage that Dr. Jiwoo obtained. The exploration team approached a clearly marked nesting site. They ignored multiple warning displays from the creature. They used neural disruptors at levels that exceed recommended safety margins. These actions violate at least 6 different statutes. Mirai stood perfectly still, processing. These are serious allegations. Do you have evidence? I have the tracking device, Jiwoo said. I have the footage. I have medical scans showing damage consistent with neural disruptor overuse. And I have testimony from everyone on this station who watched that creature go from violently aggressive to calm and trusting once we stopped hurting it. Commander Hyun leaned forward. Mirai, I am invoking Station Authority Protocol 9. This creature is now under medical quarantine pending investigation of potential welfare violations. You may not remove it until the investigation is complete. Mirai's eyes flickered rapidly. Commander, Stellar Acquisitions will file a formal protest. This will be escalated to the Galactic Council. Let it be escalated, Hyun replied calmly. I would rather explain to the Council why I protected a creature from potential abuse than explain why I allowed documented welfare violations to continue. Mirai left without another word, its movements precise and controlled. The moment the door closed, Jiwoo felt her legs go weak. She sat down heavily, adrenaline draining from her system. Thank you, she said to both Taek and Hyun. I thought I was going to lose this fight. The fight is not over, Hyun warned. Stellar Acquisitions has significant resources and political connections. They will push back hard. Then we push harder, Taek said with surprising intensity. Dr. Jiwoo, you said we need to document everything. I suggest we compile a comprehensive report on the Leviathan's treatment, recovery, and behavioral observations. We need to prove not just that the creature was mistreated, but that it is far more intelligent than current classifications suggest. Jiwoo nodded. If we can prove it is sentient, it cannot be classified as property. It would have legal protections. Exactly, Taek agreed. And I believe we can prove it. The creature has shown problem-solving abilities, emotional complexity, clear communication attempts, and most importantly, the capacity for trust and relationship building. Those are all markers of sentience. Over the next week, Jiwoo, Taek, and a growing team of station personnel worked to document everything about the Leviathan. They recorded its interactions, tested its problem-solving abilities, studied its vocalizations. The creature cooperated with obvious curiosity, seeming to understand that something important was happening. The Leviathan learned to recognize different people, showing clear preferences for Jiwoo, but accepting Taek and several others who had spent time earning its trust. It demonstrated the ability to understand complex instructions, to anticipate medical procedures, and even to show what seemed like humor when a clumsy technician tripped over his own feet. But the most compelling evidence came from Commander Hyun. As a telepath, she could sense thoughts and emotions from other beings. Most animals showed simple emotional patterns: hunger, fear, contentment, anger. The Leviathan showed something far more complex. It thinks in concepts, Hyun reported during one of their research sessions. Not just reactions to immediate stimuli. It remembers its home, worries about its eggs, feels gratitude toward Dr. Jiwoo, and experiences something close to hope that it might return home. These are not animal responses. This is a person trapped in a form we do not understand. When Stellar Acquisitions returned with legal representatives and council arbitrators, they found themselves facing not just a medical report, but a comprehensive psychological profile that painted the Leviathan as an intelligent being deserving of rights. The hearing took place in the station's main conference hall. Corporate lawyers argued ownership and legal precedent. Jiwoo and her team argued for sentience and protection. The Leviathan sat in a specially prepared area, calm and observant, watching the proceedings with clear interest. At one point, the head arbitrator asked, Dr. Jiwoo, how can you be certain this creature understands what is happening? Perhaps it is merely well-trained. Jiwoo stood and walked over to the Leviathan. May I demonstrate? At the arbitrator's nod, she turned to the creature. Do you understand that these people want to take you away from here? That you might never go home to your eggs? The Leviathan made a low, mournful sound. Then it did something remarkable. It reached out one massive claw and gently touched Jiwoo's shoulder, then pointed with the same claw toward the corporate representatives. The gesture was unmistakable.